Good morning, friends. I am Patty Elhoff, the author of Upcycle with Decoupage, and today I thought I would go over some of probably the best tips that I can give you for napkin decoupage. The very first tip is to start small. So you can find objects that appear to be the same shape as the item that you're working on and do all of the work on that smaller item. So for example, I first put this video out where I decoupaged and did a transfer on this dresser, and I got a lot of comments, and don't feel bad about this, from people saying, I tried it and I messed up my dresser, help me, I'm not sure what to do. And I am the same way. I like to jump right into things wholeheartedly. Instead, just find a box around your house, a lot like this popcorn box that is shaped just like the dresser, and work on it instead. You can follow all of the same instructions that I use on the larger pieces on something smaller. You will probably make a few mistakes along the way, but you won't mind because it will just be a smaller piece that you may even want to discard, and then you won't feel like you've ruined anything. The next very big tip is you really should be using a napkin decoupage glue when you're decoupaging with napkins. The texture is different and it is easier to work with. It does prevent wrinkles and it can help prevent tears, which can happen easily when you're working with napkins. Now, another tip is you can make your own decoupage glue. I get this question a lot too. It's great for beginners and if you just want to experiment, but most of the recipes use a craft glue or a white glue. It turns a dingy yellow. I had one viewer write to me very annoyed saying that she used it all the time and it was just fine. But back in the day, you used to be able to use a clear wallpaper paste along with water, and that worked beautifully and lasted forever. The wallpaper paste is off the market. And another tip for you, we're going to get into cutting the napkins now. Now, I'm trying to make things a lot easier for you because I've made all of these mistakes in the past. It's fine to use these larger scissors. They've got to be very sharp to cut your napkins. You want to make sure you use these on the larger images. Also, make sure you don't separate your napkins yet. It is very hard to cut the napkins once they've been separated, so make sure you keep them at the 2 or 3 ply while you're doing the cutting. But what is really best to use when you're working with napkins, even any paper really, when you're doing decoupage, these small curved scissors. And I'll show you what they look like. These are available on my website. The link is directly below this video in the description box. It'll take you right over to my website, which goes through Amazon. And these scissors, I'll show you in a moment, they're just so much smaller, they're easier to use, they're very sharp, they're inexpensive, and you can see compared to these larger scissors, they get into these little intricate spaces a lot easier. By the way, I'm using random napkins here. Nothing is supposed to match or be pretty. And then here's the larger clunky scissor again. It's heavy on the hands, it's not user-friendly. Those aren't user-friendly. So for these smaller intricate spaces, you would want to use the smaller decoupage scissors. And another method with cutting napkins, which I really prefer, is if you take a fine artist's paintbrush like this, you wet it. Now keep your fingers over the images, you wet the napkin and you tear away the excess that you don't want. I'm sorry that's not focusing well there. I was looking at the napkin instead of through the camera. So just keep your finger or your thumb over the image so that you don't tear any of the image or flower away. And here you can see where there was a hard cut with the scissors. And on the rest of the flowers, you can't see the edge because I used the method with the wet paintbrush. And then on to our next tip. You always want to use a lighter colored paint beneath your napkins. And ideally, you want to match the background of the napkin with your paint color. You can see here in this next shot how black or darker background colors do not work with napkins. The images look flat, they don't pop, they don't stand out. So ideally, if your background to your napkin is white, you want to paint your surface white. If it is tan or beige, well, off-white, you want to try to get as close to that as possible. This will make the napkins look like they are painted on. You can also paint your background white, completely white, which will help the napkin pop if you're using the whole napkin. So if you're not going to cut it at all and you place the napkin over, let's say, a box. I'm just doing this on a page right now, but you can see that the white background helps this to pop. It also helps it not only if you're using the whole napkin, but if you're just cutting out the single image or one single image. You do just want to make sure that you avoid this, and this is where you don't take the steps to cut out your image properly. It can look like this, and that's just not an appealing look. You can see the whole background of the napkin is right there. Then the next tip is don't be afraid to put your projects in the oven to dry. And there are a couple of reasons for this. This particular piece that I worked on, I think it had more of a traditional set of colors on it, blues and reds, and not anything that I liked. So I painted it white, then I covered it with napkins, and you can see by all of these little indentations and spaces on here, it could be a little bit complicated and get very wrinkled. By putting this in the oven, it smoothed out all of the wrinkles, and it helped the paper and the decoupage glue to just adhere to every single curve on this item. Decoupage glues are non-toxic. You won't smell anything while it's in the oven. And as long as you keep your oven temperature below 170, even 175 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll be fine. You just put it into a cold oven, set the oven to 170, and when the oven reaches 170, turn it off and leave your piece in there for about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, I personally have an electric oven, and it takes maybe 7 to 10 minutes for it to reach that temperature, just in case you don't have a timer. And you can also do this in a gas oven. I have friends who've told me that they have a gas oven, and this works just as well in the gas oven. And of course, you want to make sure never to put plastic, PVC, anything that may melt or could be toxic inside of your oven. Now, here are just a few random tips that I've found worked along the way, and chalk paint by far is the best paint to use when you're painting anything. And the number one reason is because it can be applied to just about any surface. I've used it over wood, and this was a shiny surface. I've used it over metal. This was a teapot. Over plastic. I've used it over glass. I've used it over a guitar that had a very shiny surface on it. And I've used it over seashells, among several other surfaces. There's no base coat needed. You don't have to sand anything, and it is such a tremendous time saver. And by the way, the chalk paint can also go in the oven. And an easy way to separate your napkins is if you take your index finger and your thumb and you dampen them, just keep a little water handy, and press them on the corner of the napkin. Pull away the first layer, then the second layer. Also, between coats of decoupage glue, and most of our projects require at least 2 coats, you want to take your damp brushes or your brushes that are wet with decoupage glue and just keep them wrapped in a damp cloth. Make sure the cloth doesn't dry out. This way your brushes won't get ruined and they won't get sticky. You don't have to dry your projects in the oven. I prefer to because I'm impatient, and when I'm working on videos, I need things to dry quickly. And if you do use the oven method to dry, you only need to do that for the first coat. I tend to put mine in between every coat because the oven stays warm for quite a while. So even though it's turned off, I keep my project in there for about 10 or 15 minutes. It dries the glue that much faster. That takes us to our next random tip. Some decoupage glues say or claim that they are a top coat and a decoupage glue in one, no top coat needed. I never like that because I still top coat all of my work. I have had problems with heat, humidity, sometimes sunlight. The heat can make the decoupage glue tacky or sticky, especially when you're making glass votives and you put candles in there. So I always use a top coat. It also protects all of your work. You also want to make sure that each coating of decoupage glue is completely dry before you move on to your next step. And you'll know that by touch. If you touch it and it feels tacky, it's not completely dry. It's got to be really dry. And the most common question that I'm asked is, where do I get my napkins? I do get the majority of my napkins from my own website. So the link is down below once again. You can also keep an eye out if you go into higher end supermarkets. You can find them in better stationery stores. Now I have them, as I said, on my website now. I will be putting up a new website soon where I will have other places where you can get the napkins besides just through Amazon. By the way, if you have Amazon Prime, all of the same features apply. And when you go through my website, it allows me to keep on making these videos also. So thank you very much for that. And I do have about 3 or 4 videos specifically for brand new people. There's one video, and I'll put the link below again in the description box for you, that shows you how to do 3 different techniques for decoupage for beginners. And in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for your lovely comments. Upcycle with Decoupage is also on Facebook. If you go over and like and follow the page, you'll be notified every week when I put a new video out. Just showing you a little bit of the waterfall where I come out and sit every once in a while, especially now that it's getting warmer, so that I can get inspired and jump right back into my videos. Okay, I will see you guys next week with another video. Thanks again, friends. Bye-bye.